welcome to the regular council meeting of Monday, November 26, 2018. A bittersweet event. It's the last council meeting of this council, and there'll be a couple of us that aren't coming back, and so we have some special presentations a little later on in the meeting. But this is our last meeting as a group, so let's make it a good one. Moved by Det Schumacher, seconded by Dan Eimer. Be it resolved that the regular council meeting agenda dated Monday, November 26, 2018 be adopted as printed and circulated. All those in favor? That's carried. Are there any disclosures of pecuniary interest? Okay, none. We'll go right into invited and ceremonial presentations. And the first is a presentation by Patrick Rees from our consulting group, WSP. We did some stakeholder consultations on the whole Macaulay-Robertson project, along with the other user groups in the area, and so he's here to present the results of that to council. So Patrick, come on down. Before you do that, well, come on down. You can take your seat while I do something that I should have done first. We're so used to having emergency services royalty in our midst with the fire chief here all the time. I was remiss not to point out that we have the Muskoka paramedic chief in the house tonight. Chief, thank you for being here, Chief McWilliam, and the detachment commander John Graham is here as well from the OPP, and so want to acknowledge that they're here as well. So, gentlemen, thank you for being here as well. And the floor is yours, Patrick.
First of all, thank you very much for all right. So thank you everyone for inviting me here today. As the mayor had mentioned, my name is Patrick Rees. I am a landscape architect and I work for the consulting firm WSP. I was hired by the town of Huntsville to complete the detailed design for the Macaulay-Robertson baseball fields, and I'm going to do a little presentation today to sum things up. So just to provide, thank you very much. So just to provide some background, the General Committee approved the proposed upgrades to the Macaulay-Robertson baseball fields on June 25th, 2018. Following that approval, some of the local baseball clubs, they voiced their concerns about the infield material that was being used and that we were only providing a warning track for Field F. Based on that, a presentation was brought to council by me on September 26th to further discuss these concerns and obtain direction from the council on how to proceed. Based on those discussions, it was requested by the council that prior to a large investment into the renovation of the diamonds, that additional meetings be held with all Macaulay-Robertson Recreation Park stakeholders and interest groups, and to determine each of their primary needs moving forward and determine whether those needs could be spatially and functionally achieved within the park itself. So those stakeholder meetings were held on Wednesday, November 17th, right here in the council chambers. Each meeting was conducted by myself, my colleague Amanda Gebert, as well as town staff Colleen McDonald, Steve Hernan, Carrie Lamb, and Councillor Terziano. Individual meetings were scheduled with representative from each of the sports groups invested with the Macaulay-Robertson Park. They consisted of Stan Remington from men's fastball, Dan Gwinnett from slow pitch, Peter Haynes from the Muskoka Hornets, Beth Goodhue from the curling club, Kevin Farley from disc golf, Patrick Gunter from the skate park, and Dave Kaplan from the soccer club. So during these stakeholder meetings, each of the groups were asked to present the following. They're asked to provide their greatest needs, their secondary needs, and their future needs that they could see for their sport. And further to these, we also asked some general questions about the general utilization of the existing facilities, the demand trends of their sport, whether they're growing, shrinking, or maintaining, any obstacles impeding their growth, and obstacles and conflicts with other sport groups within the park itself. So all these comments were recorded, and we created a preliminary map just to see if we could spatially and functionally achieve everything within the park itself. So a summary of those comments have been provided within your meeting packages, but for this presentation, I'm going to touch on the highlights of those items. This might take a second to load. It was a big file. If it doesn't, it's all right because I have smaller ones further on. So basically all that was, it was the overarching map of everything together, but I'm going to zoom in on the individual areas. Just a little bit easier to follow. So the first club that we met with the baseball clubs, and it is important to note that the high priorities noted by them were, for the most part, related to safety concerns within the park themselves. So the number one item was the infield material, and noting that they require an infield material that can hold up better for multiple games. Right now, we heard multiple times that after one baseball game, it essentially looked like someone had played a tournament there for the entire day, and it was completely ripped up. So only one group spoke about a specific material, but the other two were open to any solution that improved that performance itself. Another item was the warning track. The warning track is definitely one of the largest and highest priority requests by the baseball clubs. It's the biggest item just from a safety standpoint, in that it denotes when a fence is when someone is running towards a fence. It alerts them that the fence is actually coming, rather than just running into the fence without their knowledge. So that is one of their probably their second most important item that they've listed as for a request. Moving down, the next one was the backstop and infield fencing. Right now, they did note that some balls are actually getting through the fencing that is currently there, and it is basically reached the end of its life cycle. Furthermore to that, right now there's overhead netting that is over top of all of the backstop fencing, and basically it is impeding the baseball from going straight up in the air, and it's stopping fly balls from, that would be a normal fly ball, it's basically making the ball out of play. The next item was field lighting. Field lighting, essentially right now, it is very outdated. The poles are short, so when baseballs fly above the lights, the players can no longer see the ball itself. They also noted that there's been situations where someone at first base on field F will be trying to catch a baseball, and they get a glare from the lights on field A or B in their face, and they can't see the ball, and they've been hit by it. So the field lighting is definitely another big item. The last one doesn't really fall into a safety concern, but all of the clubs still noted that something that we talked about at the last council meeting, that field B, the size and length of it in left field was too short. It's something that can be achieved, but for the part of it of extending it, we can definitely do something, whether we increase the size of the fencing itself in the outfield, more like the green monster for the Boston Red Sox or something like that. It's something that can be achieved within the space that's currently there. That's just a picture of the baseball fields. So moving on, we spoke with the curling club. Now, the curling club's highest priority at this current time is they require a new location to build a brand new curling club. And I'm just going to jump ahead to the next page if it works, which apparently it's not going to.
Makes me nervous. The bigger the file, the more money, or what?
It's a possibility. Well, we'll see. Well, while it's loading, so the field, the curling club itself, there's a few different locations where they've proposed within the park. One is directly beside Field F. Another is in the former Fowler site, and one is at the far south end of the base of Macaulay Robertson Park. However, down at the south end of the park, it does require servicing to go even further, so it's not necessarily the best location for the curling club just because of the additional cost for the servicing. Now, since this isn't loading, I'll just go back here. So some of the alternate solutions that we discussed with the curling club itself, we only kind of discussed them in part during the stakeholder meeting, and then we discussed a little bit further offline after they had left. But one of the items that we discussed was expanding the curling club in its current location. Right now it's only a 4-sheet curling club, and they would like to increase this to 6. So what was suggested was that we use the current parking lot to expand the curling club into, which would make it a 6-sheet curling club. And for parking, it was mentioned that there was a possibility to purchase 1 or 2 of the residential lots adjacent to the curling club to use as a parking lot. One other item that we touched on was the potential for the curling club to look at the agricultural fairlands as a potential site for the curling club and partner with them, as it's a facility that already has existing servicing, and the fall fair falls outside of the season that they would be curling in. Just the last item on there is shared use opportunities, and a curling club in the Macaulay Robertson Park is welcomed by all the other sports groups within the park itself. They can use it as a space for meetings, and they can use it as a place to gather after baseball games, have a drink at the bar there. There's the only downside that was mentioned during that was that it may divert some rental revenue from the existing town facilities, just because it's being to the curling club space. But having the curling club right there as a use space for the other stakeholders was a very high priority item for all the groups. So next we spoke with the soccer club. Their highest priority is a new practice area. The practice area itself, currently last season, right now they have to use 20 by 20 grids as part of Soccer Canada for their practice. And so essentially they were asking for a 90 by 90 meter area to put these 20 meter grids down for a practice facility. Last year, they drew these grids on their own soccer fields with a different line paint. However, some of the kids were finding it very hard to determine what was an actual field line and what was a practice line. So during games, they weren't sure of where the actual out of bounds was. So the soccer club is asking that a new practice area is developed within the park itself. Hopefully this loads. There we go. Let's steal this. So on this map, we've denoted 2 locations for potential practice area for soccer. One being south of Field F. The other is south of the South Soccer Fields. One alternate option that was discussed was to move the adult rep soccer to the Memorial Park field, but upgrades would be required to that facility. But this would allow the soccer club to utilize the north fields in the park as a practice facility, and this would keep all of the youths to the Macaulay Park itself. So if there are one child, if parents have two children, one's playing soccer on the south fields where another child is playing on the north field, so they don't have to go to two different locations. For example, if they're at Conroy Park, it's just a way to kind of keep them all within the same space itself. Their last request was for a lit field. Their preferred lit field would be Conroy Park, as it is an artificial turf field. Artificial turf field has a longer playing season. You can play earlier in the spring, you can play later in the fall, and you can play later at night because now you would have the lights. We also spoke with the Disc Golf Association. So their current request is for a 21-hole layout within the existing park space. What's nice about the disc golf is that it can be configured however, it can be configured in any location in the park. Should a curling club be placed in one position, you can always move the disc golf around it. As long as we know where everything is going to be placed in the future, the disc golf club can basically plan the holes around all of those features. So disc golf kind of is one of those things that relies on knowing where all the other future additions to the park are going to be. However, with that being said, if disc golf were to set up a hole in one location and they put in a brand new soccer field, the infrastructure from the actual disc golf can be moved quite easily. Basically, all that there really is a is the tee area, which is just paving stones, and then the basket for where the actual hole is itself. So it's something that can be moved quite easily. Because that doesn't load. So the last club that we spoke with was the skate park. Their largest request was for drainage improvements. Right now they're currently having flooding issues in the skate park itself, which is causing sand and gravel to accumulate on the actual surfacing, which is very dangerous for people that are skateboarding. If they hit sand or gravel, they can fall and be severely injured. So basically what this would require is just some grading adjustments around the skate park itself. And from what I've heard, this is something that the town is actually already looking into. So this is something that will likely be corrected in the near future. They also requested some minor modifications to some of the existing features just to reinvigorate and improve the park itself. Some of it's just removing and salvaging and reinstalling existing rails that are there, and the addition of some concrete ramps and boxes. So that's just a picture of where the skate park is. So just to conclude everything here, so the council requested meetings with all the stakeholder groups to determine whether their needs could all be spatially and functionally achieved within the park itself. The meetings were conducted on November the 7th, and based on those discussions and the preliminary mapping of those required needs, it was determined that all the needs put forth by all of the groups can spatially and functionally be achieved within the current property limits. So the next steps from this, the information from this process that was completed will be passed along and utilized by the community master plan team to inform and assist them with determining future priorities within the park itself. And that's it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Patrick. Go to council. If there are any questions. Councillor Alcock.
Thank you. Thank you, Your Worship, and thank you for the presentation, Patrick. That was really insightful. Just a very quick question. You had identified on your plan the mountain bike club, the possibility of an area for them, and so I wondered if you had a chance to talk to them, or that was just a...
The mountain bike club?
Yep.
No, unfortunately, we never actually heard anything from the mountain bike club. I don't believe anyone came forward.
Okay, but that area you did identify
Yes,
as possible...
and unfortunately, the map wasn't working, wasn't loading on it, but basically the area that we put aside that could potentially be for the mountain bike club was the area east of the baseball fields. Actually, you can, if that was back up. But if you have it on the map there.
No, that's not what I was at. I was just wondering how you identified that as the area, but that's okay.
It was a good area because we looked at it as a potential future expansion for the Frisbee as well, and Frisbee and mountain bike, both of those facilities, they can work together. There's a lot of undulations and uneven ground, so it's an area that can be quite desirable for the mountain bike club.
Any other questions? Councillor Schumacher.
Thank you, Your Worship. Thank you, Patrick. Again, good work. In your presentation on the curling side of it, you mentioned the possibility of using the existing location. My concern when I hear something like that is you're tying a new part into an old part, and other buildings that we've got in the municipality, that's never really works out as a good fit. Any thoughts?
I mean, I am someone that curls, but I mean, I haven't seen the current Huntsville Curling Club, so I don't know the current condition of it. From what I know, it's basically kind of this year, or it needs to be decided exactly what is to be done with it. So I would say that something could be done with it, but not knowing the background on it, it's hard for me to say. But I mean, any sort of money can always decide things. But
if I may, I would support future council to look at a new facility. Thank you.
The first of what could be many parting shots. Any other questions? The night is young yet. Okay, Patrick, thank you very much for your presentation.
Thank you.
We'll obviously discuss this a little bit more shortly. Thank you. Okay, next on our invited and ceremonial presentations, we have John Paul Graham, our staff sergeant, detachment sergeant, to come and talk to us about the community satisfaction survey. Use this again.
Excellent. Thank you, Your Worship. That's a hard act to follow, and especially with the hard questions being asked. Thank you for inviting me to this this meeting this evening. Thank the councillors that are presently going to continue on their work with hard work in the town of Huntsville, and ones that are bidding a farewell. I do appreciate your commitment to the community that we all serve proudly. I'm going to try to stay on point because there's two things I love talking about, is talking about the OPP and talking about our community. So this is a great survey that was conducted, and I'll quickly go through and give you an oversight to allow some questions to be asked afterwards, and what we are looking at in 2019. So this survey was conducted by telephone between April 10th and May of 31st, 2018. The same survey was conducted with the same questions in 2012, 2015, and then this year. Persons that were surveyed had to be 16 years of age, and there was no member within the household that was employed by the OPP. A target of 380 completed surveys was was our target, but we actually achieved 381 surveys during that time period. Out of those 381 surveys, is broken down by Huntsville Rural, Huntsville Town, and by Lake of Bays. And as we go through the survey, we can identify significant discrepancies between the two surveys, good or bad, or any indifference. The actual percentage was taken out of the top two answers from the 4 options that were provided to the individuals being surveyed. As you see, the demographics of the survey was 75 years and older and 64 years and younger, and broken down by female and male percentages. Within the survey, they were asked whereabouts do they live. The majority of them indicate that they live in the country as they're being surveyed, 31% in town. Now, some of the questions that were asked within the survey, as you can see, 97% of the people surveyed felt very safe or safe within the community overall. And within that, there was no discrepancies or significant discrepancies between the 2015-2018 survey. As we go through the survey, you'll see that it'll break down the average between the top two answers in the next slide. Again, 80% of the people surveyed felt that the OPP were very involved, somewhat involved in the community. And I can surely tell you that I'm very honored to say that 90% of my overall staff is living in the area that we police, and certainly have invested interest in being part of coaching programs, other service groups, steering committees. We even have our own OPP mixed league baseball team, which we're still trying to get out of the gutter on that one. So I was glad to see the presentation before this one. The difference between the people surveyed is that the town of Huntsville felt that the OPP were more involved in the community than Lake of Bays. And I only contribute this to Huntsville being the hub of a number of service groups, activities for youth and adult activities. 90% of the people surveyed felt that the OPP had the ability to work within the community to solve local problems. Again, this is just a breakdown of where the results actually lie between satisfied and very satisfied with the OPP being involved in solving local issues that may arise. %87% of the people surveyed felt the OPP were visible in the community, and 88% felt the same with the patrols on the highways. And they both are within being satisfied or very satisfied within our presence on the highways in the communities. Now, the people surveyed, as in the previous two surveys, were asked whether they would indicate yes on the issues being a community issue listed below: property crime, nuisance activities, alcohol abuse, drug substance abuse, and illegal drug grow labs. I can certainly tell you that prior to the survey coming out in April 10th, I recognize that this is an underlying issue within our community, and we established within Huntsville, in conjunction with the Bracebridge Attachment, a Muskoka Street team, which are dedicated and focused on substance abuse issues and property crimes within our communities. There's a sergeant and 4 constables within that unit that service all of Muskoka. And what we've done specifically in Huntsville is in support of that unit is we had created an ambassador within our detachment to look at community mobilization initiatives and bringing others together, as we see that enforcement's really not the end-all be-all or the one key element that's going to solve some of these issues within the communities. So the mobilization officer is looking at more of an enhanced collaboration with enforcement, but engagement and education, working with the health unit, hospitals, CMHA, Canadian Mental Health and Addiction Services, to certainly look at decreasing this issue as our community members see it to be a priority for us. The other questions that were asked within the survey is indicating yes to the people surveyed on whether or not domestic violence, child abuse, sexual assault, or elder abuse was an issue within the community. As you can see, significant concerns about domestic violence, sexual assaults, and child abuse is still a high percentage within our community as a result of this survey. And at the end of the slide, you'll see that 2012 and 2015 would project the same type of percentages. As you know, according to the Globe Mail article that brought limelight to the sexual assault issues that were occurring in Muskoka, we then certainly enhanced our ability to provide additional training to our frontline officers, as well as come up with a victim support liaison officer that's specifically dedicated to abuse issues within Huntsville and Muskoka wide, and looking at whether or not it's repeat cycle of abuse or otherwise. And that's been one of our priorities in my term in office in Huntsville in the last few years. When we look at, again, surveys, people surveyed indicating yes to other issues that they feel important within the community. Again, we asked the same questions in 2012, 2015. Drugs within the schools and violence in the school and lack of programming. I have seen this in the last few years of being the commander in Huntsville. In November 1st of this year, we've developed a more robust program for an individual out of our office to be solely dedicated on community safety issues and the schools, and they are dedicated to the overall well-being and wellness of our community in collaboration with a number of stakeholders such as mental health workers within the schools and the school school board themselves, and trying to coordinate programming and focus more on our youth, which certainly are going to be the next leaders in our communities. Majority of the people surveyed out of the issues that have been brought into the limelight in the survey certainly are from the downtown of Huntsville, out of all the other ones surveyed, rural and Lake of Bays area. They have significantly the highest percentage out of indicating some of these issues. As you can see here, there's a significant decrease between 2015 and 2018 survey on property crimes and youth gathering in the streets. People surveyed, 98% of the people that were, or 98 people that were surveyed within the past year indicated that they felt very satisfied or satisfied with the ease of contacting the OPP. This is, I think this has contributed to our detachment still being within the town of Huntsville. And it's a short distance to either drive to the police station or they're still calling our 789-5551 number, which is, you're going to get somebody from the detachment to speak to. And that's a breakdown of individuals being satisfied or very satisfied with the ease of contacting the OPP in this area. The OPP's effectiveness, which is important, it's key for the work that we do, is that we can't lose focus on how effective we are as officers working with our community stakeholders. 86% feel very satisfied or satisfied with the OPP enforcement on aggressive driving, and 88% feel that OPP is enforcing drunk driving laws. We started a campaign with the District of Muskoka called Muskoka Safe Roads Campaign, and it's more of a enhanced collaboration of identifying roads within the district and municipality on whether they have an issue with aggressive drivers, drunk drivers, or even just as the population increases within Muskoka, whether it's needed for an environmental design and changes to the road curvature. In April 2018, I fully supported an initiative within our detachment to dedicate an individual committed to traffic, marine, and officer, which he is a true ambassador of working with and focusing on the complaints that we receive outside the general duties that the other officers would have, including our marine program for the summertime, our ATV program, as well as our snowmobile program that's certainly going to be upon us very soon. He's reached out and has partners with the Ministry of Transportation as well as the MNR, and he's done some significant work. This is a pilot project that I've entertained, and as it stands right now, since April, has been very successful in being able to curb some of the trends in aggressive driving and the impaireds within our community. Further to that, I can assure you that this attachment alone has invested fully into increasing our training efforts into our officers, given the fact that legalization of marijuana has come upon us since the 17th of October. We have, in this detachment alone, 3 drug recognition officers that are subject matter experts on impaired driving by narcotics. We have 13 sobriety field, standard field sobriety testers, which are able to perform physical demands of a person that is suspected to be impaired by drug or alcohol. And we have 12 breathalyzer technicians, which are officers specifically trained to administer and take breathalyzer, take breath samples from an individual that's been arrested for impaired driving by alcohol. Contact with the police. Within the past year, 68 people surveyed as a result of a traffic stop, property crime, or violent crime had indicated that they're very satisfied or satisfied with having contact with one of our officers in Huntsville. Overall, the individuals that were surveyed, 92% have felt very satisfied or satisfied with the quality of policing service being provided by the OPP in this area. Ninety-two percent of the people surveyed felt very safe or safe walking home. The difference between this question between Huntsville proper, which is the town, and Lake of Bays, is that individuals from the Lake of Bays area felt significantly safer walking home compared to the town of Huntsville. %95 of the people surveyed felt that the officers policing our community was approachable and friendly. When asked where the community feels that police presence should be the highest, the evening was certainly one that's indicated as the highest, is at 52%. The internet is certainly a useful tool for us and for others. When asked if individuals were aware that the internet was sometimes used to lure or abduct children, to distribute pornography, or to commit a fraud, as you can see, it's no surprise that people asked this question, felt very strongly that the internet is being used for that. I have a saying in the office that although crime stats could be down overall within the OPP in this province, I beg the question. I think the traditional face of a criminal has changed, and they're using the internet as a means to commit the crimes that we are now becoming more accustomed to. So the OPP, as a whole, is changing our ways on investigating internet crime and coming up with a robust cybercrime strategy. And the rollout for training for our frontline officers is going to be certainly a great undertaking for us. When asked, yes, if the crimes below of the charts is a problem for the people being surveyed. Vandalism, break and enters in a residential area, and then alcohol offenses in public property. Their property crimes still seem to be one of our Achilles' heel when it comes down to the perception of what is being done out there in the community from these individuals seeking opportunities to break into individuals' homes. The majority of the people that were surveyed, and identifying the previous slide as being problematic in their community, the significant people that responded yes are from the town of Huntsville proper, more so than the rural Huntsville area as well as Lake of Bays. However, I can tell you that there's been a significant decrease in comparison from the 2015 survey to this year's survey on all those offenses that were in the previous slide. As you can see, the green cell highlights a positive change in the previous cycle in the survey. So satisfaction and visibility of the OPP on the highways in the community is certainly a small increase from the previous survey. Property crime is down. Youth on the streets are down, and all the other ones appear to be or are 1 degree to the next, up or down from the previous years in which the survey was conducted. In 2012, 15, and 2018, you can see that there's a significant change in the response from people surveyed indicating yes, from whether alcohol offenses in the public areas, vandalism, or break and enters were problematic in their communities. Now that's the end of the presentation. I'd certainly be open to answering any questions that anybody may have in the survey or of me today.
Okay, thank you. Any questions? Councillor Thompson.
Thank you very much, Your Worship. Thank you, Jean-Paul, for the presentation. Back to the abuse slide that you had there. 42% of those surveyed felt that domestic abuse was a problem in the community. Are those based on unique instances, or is that? I found that I guess that particular percentage a little bit confusing.
So before the survey rolled out, so I was asked if I wanted to change or alter the questions that were being asked to the people being surveyed. And so you have to look at the demographics of what they perceive to be issues within the community, and as a result of the questions being asked, the percentage remained relatively the same. I challenge our organization as we evolve to more people having cell phones versus having home phones, and the demographics on who we're trying to target in the survey to be a little more robust in the next time we do this 3 or 4 years from now compared to what we see today. So as I receive a survey, it allows me to start the conversation and looking at analyzing what we're doing either proactively in trying to curve what the perception is from the community members to the actuality of what those numbers actually look like for us. I can certainly tell you that violent crimes within Huntsville, specifically abuse issues, are on the decline, but the perception is still there that it is an issue in our community, which again, it's our job, my job, as well as the members that work out of this attachment to change that mentality of that it is still an issue. So we got to do better on that.
Go ahead, Rick.
So for clarification then, John Paul, then is 42% of those surveyed think that that is a problem, not necessarily 42% of those surveyed felt that they had been subjected to that.
That's correct.
Yeah.
That's correct. So when they're asked, these are the only specific options that they had to indicate yes or indicate no, and that was a percentage that indicate yes, they feel is still a problem.
Councillor Emmer.
Thank you, Worship, and thanks, John Paul. Just a quick question. I'm sure this same survey is probably done in other communities of about the same size as ours. How do we compare to other communities, or do you know?
It's hard to compare us to other communities because we service vast variety of individuals, seasonal, local, and I think Muskoka is unique in a way of trying to grasp what it looks like for us moving forward. We're doing, I can tell you that compared to my colleagues and to our satisfaction survey to some within the province of Ontario, we're doing pretty good in the sense that our overall satisfaction for what our contact with the general public is fairly high compared to others.
Okay. Councillor Schumacher.
Thank you, Your Worship. Thank you, John Paul. This is aside from the survey, but you did indicate to ask a question of you. In your sense of your officers and the OPP in general, from time to time on the news there's issues where an officer has had a problem with somebody that's maybe mentally challenged. Do you feel that your officers and officers in general are being trained in that area?
Yeah, I think when we look at the increase for social disorder, and it could be a number of different reasons. Mental health is one of them. Addictions are on the other hand of the issue that we were dealing with. We're trained annually, and we are working right now. Actually, we're doing a program called Mental Health First Aid, identifying certainly out in our community and our own people, what does that look like for us? And it's about working collaboratively with our community members, right, and our stakeholders, and recognizing that, you know, the stigma of mental health is not only for police, but certainly other professions, and we want to make sure that, you know, people have the option to call for help. And we're there to listen as well.
Good.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Appreciate your presentation. Okay, next on our agenda is deputations, and we have with us Beth Goodhue, Ted Bionda, and Scott Goodhue from the Huntsville Curling Club to make a presentation on the multi-purpose facility proposal. Welcome, guys. They're using this.
Okay, everybody hear me? Yes? Okay. Good evening, Mr. Mayor, councilors, and guests. I'm Beth Goodhue, and I'm the Vice President of and Club Development for the Huntsville Curling Club. With me today, I have Scott Goodhue, who's our treasurer, and Ted Bionda, who is our president. We're here today to present our proposal on behalf of the Huntsville Curling Club Board of Directors for a multi-purpose facility. Thank you for the opportunity. And thank you to the town staff, to Carrie and Julia and Scott specifically, who helped us bring all this together, and to many of the councilors around the table who provided some input as well to help shape our proposal for you today. Also like to thank Det for his vote of support earlier this evening. Clarifying the process that we had earlier with WSP, we were focused on the new facility, and that's where the conversations were around the build of the new facility at McCully-Robertson. So before I begin, I would like to play a small clip featuring a Canadian curling icon that captures the essence of the impact of curling in a community.
I learned to curl when I was 13. I remember how excited I was to go to the club. It always felt special. Because of the game, because it was a place where it didn't matter your age or background. I visited clubs right across this country, in small towns and in big. It's always the same feeling. The feeling that you're at the heart of the community. Because a curling club is a community. A community of millions of Canadians from coast to coast to coast. Where thousands of children get their start. Where veterans, Olympians, Paralympians, and youth battle for glory, one weekend at a time. Where local really means down the street and around the bend. And the positive effect on Canada is not only economic, but social and cultural. Curling always felt special to me. Because it is special.
In 1,000 curling clubs across this country, curling invites Canadians to connect and inspires communities to grow. Pride, community, growth. Let's grow together.
Okay. So pride, community, growth. Thanks, Brad. Curling is a lifelong sport, but it is only one of the many recreational activities and clubs that Huntsville supports today. Council has heard over the last many months from many of these clubs. Each sport, each club wants to build their capacity to grow and to provide a sense of community for their members. We are proposing the first phase of a multi-purpose facility to build that sense of community for recreation in Huntsville, and the curling club is willing to come to the table with the dollars to support their sport. We are looking to the town to support the infrastructure to drive the community and socialization of recreation and active, healthy living in Huntsville. This multi-purpose facility can be the catalyst for growth of all recreation in Huntsville. Phase 2 could be an indoor turf for soccer, lacrosse, or a gymnasium, whatever, as our partners and the town are ready. So why a new site for Huntsville Curling Club? There's been dialogue with the town of Huntsville about the need for a new curling facility over the last several decades. This last journey has started in earnest in 2012 with a sustainability study and plan presented in December of 2017. So almost 7 years later, we have an aging facility that needs significant investment. As it did over 40 years ago, some of you may remember, the roof is at risk again of preventing our ability to provide safe curling to our community. We do not comply to current accessibility regulation requirements, and our current location caps our growth and limits our ability to provide additional programming for the community. Our lack of infrastructure and parking creates safety and access concerns. We are at crossroads. We have committed to our membership that by the end of this season, we will love it or list it. The town of Huntsville's strategic objectives I think, align very well with the proposal that we have brought to you today. Multi-purpose facility supports the growth of active, healthy living for all, including youth and healthy aging. It adds a facility that will drive four-season economic growth for the community. Moving the club from a residential area and neighborhood addresses many of the environmental and safety concerns. It will enhance the roads and infrastructure at Macaulay-Robertson. This proposal supports the financial management strategies of the town by streamlining your operations through shared services and partnerships. The Huntsville Curling Club wishes to own and operate this facility as an active partner with the town. So the numbers, I'm sure you're all waiting for these. What are the numbers? We believe that it's a $5.2 million build, of which the curling shed is approximately $2 million of that build. Huntsville Curling Club is willing to provide upfront contribution of $1 million. And over 20 years, we will provide an additional $1 million. That leaves $3.2 million for the town of Huntsville and the federal and provincial governments through the grants, and many of the potential grants are listed there below. We're hoping that Huntsville Curling Club and the town can partner to get our fair share of those grants. So the Huntsville Curling Club contribution of $1 million and $1 million over 20 years. In addition to that, we would like to lead the design and build project from contractor selection through to the completion. In partnership with the town and through milestones and checkpoints as required. Huntsville Curling Club will manage and operate the completed building with rental of common space and delivery of services to the other sports clubs. We will carry a reserve fund to manage all capital requirements over the debenture period. We will not come back to the table again. We wish to partner, again, with the town of Huntsville to secure those provincial and federal grants. From the town, we need the land that we had talked through in our motion in December of 2015, or an agreeable equivalent, and there has been some discussions on Fowler. At this point, it doesn't matter to us. We are just looking for a location. We want the town to complete the site servicing, complete the design and build for an additional $200,000 and then $3 million. Those amounts will be required over 3 fiscal years, really, from 2020 to 2022. At this point, if there were to have funding come available in 2019, could the curling club move that up? Absolutely. We're doing this so the town has the opportunity to plan for and manage the requests that we are making of them. We are asking you to waive the development fees and municipal taxes of the new building and provide ongoing maintenance and snow removal of the shared parking facilities at Macaulay-Robertson. So if we look at the Huntsville Curling Club revenues, expenses, operating P&L, and our cumulative P&L, the planning committee has spent a great deal of time over the last many months modeling potential financial scenarios. We've tested the model, we've stress tested it, we've looked at what if our assumptions are wrong, what could go wrong, what's worst case scenario. We've done all of those. What you see here is a conservative approach to our potential financial situation over the next 10 years. You'll see our revenues growing, our expenses growing, and our what you see there is that it's positive cash flow except for in the year that we move. So we return to a positive cash flow in the second year of operation at the new facility. So what drives that financial situation? The biggest assumption is around our growth. One of the biggest assumptions is around our growth. And I think the Huntsville Curling Club over the last 3 years has demonstrated over 20% growth in our membership. Our school program hosted over 500 children last season, and it is almost booked to capacity for this season. Our growth rates used in the financial model are very conservative. We are using only 5 to 9% growth with a 13% bump in the year of our opening. You see the blip there in 2022. So I believe that our financials support the Huntsville Curling Club position that we're well positioned to support this initiative as a solid partner with the town. So, next steps. We are asking if the Town of Huntsville staff and council could review this request in your upcoming budgeting process. We're asking if you can complete due diligence, of which we will be available to respond to any questions, provide information, and support for your discussions. And then you come back to us in February of 2019 with a response to our request. As it is at that time that we need to start our plan to love it or list it. In closing, we've had curling in Huntsville for over 100 years. The sport of curling is growing, and it will continue to grow, and the Huntsville Curling Club will continue to grow with it. We are passionate about our sport, as our partners are passionate about theirs. This proposal is not just for curling in Huntsville, but rather it's a vision about pride, community, and growth of sport in Huntsville. We hope that the town of Huntsville will support our vision and help us build that community and capacity to grow all of our sports and drive active, healthy living in Huntsville. The downstream benefits of this forward-thinking endeavor will be realized as we create a destination recreation facility that will drive four-season economic growth for the town of Huntsville. Thank you for your consideration.
Okay, thank you very much. Well done. Ted, I see what your job is. That's good. They haven't fallen off the chairs. That's good. Are there any questions of council? Councillor Alcock.
Thank you, Your Worship, and thank you, Beth. That was I really enjoyed the presentation for sure, and I love the approach that it's looking at the community as a whole. One of the questions I do have is $3 million is a big number, and certainly I'm willing to support moving this forward as part of our budget discussions. Why wouldn't we? Having said that, it is a big number. And there was reference made to the possibility of provincial and federal grants. And I'm wondering if there, in your discussions with anybody around that, if anyone had a sense under the current provincial administration, if there's still uptake for that kind of funding, or if there's any sense of where they're at on that.
Well, I think a little bit of a crystal ball is required there. We have had conversations at both the provincial and federal level. The new provincial government is just trying to sort out what their priorities are. They've indicated they believe that there will be funding, but there's no indication as of when. Infrastructure Ontario, I think, is one of our biggest opportunities, which is the partnership at the federal, provincial, municipal, and partner level, where it's a third type funding. And all have indicated that that has worked in the past, and no commitment to it in the future, but a distinct possibility. I don't know if you want to add any more to that. Okay.
I've actually, I've chatted with Mayor Smith of Bracebridge, who, as you know, of course, is on the AMO board. And AMO is working quite diligently with the province and the federal government for that funding to flow. They're looking at a few different streams, of course. Rather selfishly, I would say he's pushing hard for the recreation infrastructure piece of it, because of course they got to spend about $40 million down there, so they're looking for some help. So they're working on it. Crystal ball might be handy. Councillor Thompson.
Thank you very much, Your Worship. Thank you, Beth, Scott, and Teddy, for your passive involvement, Ted, for sure. Just looking at an aerial shot of your present location here, Beth, and I know that one of your goals would be to go to a six sheets. If you were to, say, utilizing the present parking lot, and we're talking about a rebuild, I know after our discussion the other day, and you certainly need a new roof. You can't keep hanging pails out there to catch the water that's coming through the roof.
We have a
But-
budget special for that.
Yeah, they're $5 at Home Depot. If you were to utilize the current parking lot, okay, and let's say rebuild that building, would you have enough room there if you were to utilize the present parking lot to expand that to 6 sheets?
I'm not sure.
I mean,
I
looking
can
at the
answer that.
overhead, it looks like you would.
You could be right, but I don't know one way or the other for sure. I'm not sure that, given that parking is an issue for us today, we don't have enough parking in the lot we have
Right.
to facilitate the current membership. We have not explored using that parking to build more, to expand the club, because that would make, I think, the situation from a parking perspective untenable.
Sure.
It's-
And I know you've mentioned that parking is a problem now in the neighborhood, right? If you were to, say, able to acquire the properties to the immediate east of that, say 2 of them, would that be an adequate space for parking, do you think?
Again, very good questions. I know that previous boards has approached the neighbors looking to purchase, but they're longtime residents, and, you know, when that would happen, or if that would happen, and would it be contiguous properties or one and then another, and is that really what that residential neighborhood is gonna want? So, good questions. I'm not sure I know the answers to
Right,
those.
okay. I just know that that was one of the, sort of the sub-options, I think, that you had in your presentation, as opposed to, you know, relocating
No,
it.
so the discussion earlier today, that we did not have that conversation with WSP. That must have been a conversation had with council and the contractor. So that was new news to us.
Okay. All right, thank you.
We'll go to Councillor Weeb next.
Thank you, Mayor Aitchison. Beth, firstly, how many core members do you have at present? And I noticed on the slide you said you wanted to grow it by 200 members. So give me a sense of what you've got now and where you'd like to be.
Right. So members, we had 253, but active participants, we had 348 last year. So our membership for this year, we are anticipating that we will grow core to 286 and our actual participants at 391. We are already we do 3 trimesters in our draw system, and we're already 50% to our goal of growth in one trimester. So, yes.
And so just to follow up on that, so as it stands with the 4 sheets, you said the words that you're capped in growth.
We will be capped very shortly.
Okay.
Okay, we're not capped yet. We do have open ice and the opportunity to expand. No question about that. We have a very active school program and youth program. We were looking at potential to start a seniors program as well. There are a lot of senior curlers, but working with the seniors residences, et cetera. With those kinds of programs, then we can't do very much more with just member curling. So I'm going to say another 100, 80 to 100 members, and we're capped.
Okay, thanks for that.
Councillor Emmer.
Oh, thank you, Worship. Through you, just a quick question. You mentioned the snow removal and looking after the parking lots and stuff. So if you had this new build, the capital expenditures for looking after the building and maintenance in the building, et cetera, would that be on the curling club, or is that be something the town would have to assume and start building?
No, that would be the curling club. We have built into our financial models a capital fund and a reserve fund, so that we would have that reserve fund to put away for the rainy day 10, 20 years out, where we do have to start replacing the original equipment. So we are doing that today, which is why we're in a position to love it or list it. And we would continue to do that. So we wouldn't be coming back to the town for capital investment in the facility itself.
Deputy Mayor Terziano, and then Councillor Fitzgerald.
Thank
She
you,
gave me the eye
Worship.
first.
Actually, I don't really have a question. I just want to thank you for the presentation. And I thank you for a couple of things. One, all the work that the curling club's done. I know this started in my last term of council, so it's been going on a long time. But I appreciate what you've done to date, and I appreciate the fact that you're giving us a chance to look at this within our overall budget. And I appreciate the fact that you've asked for a definite answer in the first quarter of, or February of 2019, because we have been talking about it long enough, and it is time that we make a decision, so thank you.
Thanks, Gary.
Councillor Fitzgerald.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just to echo Deputy Mayor Terziano's comments, great presentation. I know how much work you put into this. We've had several discussions and tried to have discussions, so it's nice to see this concise and clear. I'm happy to support this in budget discussions. I just had a question about membership fees. How does that actually work? Can you elaborate on that for me a little bit?
I'm going to pass that over to the treasurer.
Sure. So, Councillor, could you maybe clarify the question a little bit? Are you looking for?
Well, I don't understand the structure of memberships and events, and I know you have bonds, fields, and groups that play in leagues, but I don't understand where that you derive your fees and revenue from.
Yeah, so the lion's share of the club's revenue comes from membership fees. That's approximately 75%, maybe 70% of our revenue, and then a third of membership fees is typically what we derive from bar and concessions, and then the rest is rental income and bond spiels, and a little bit of sponsorship or advertising revenue. So it's a reasonably complex model, and it is predicated on continuing to grow the sport of curling in Huntsville. If you think about it in simple terms today, if the town of Huntsville or surrounding areas is approximately 20,000 people, we have, let's say, 200 members today for round numbers, right? So we have 1%. Can we, in 7-8 years, grow that to 2%? And we think with the demographics that represent the sweet spot for curling, that we've got a great opportunity to do that.
Thank you. Councillor Thompson.
Thank you. Thank you again, Your Worship. Now that we have the treasurer speaking out, the $1 million debenture that Beth spoke of earlier, and I think your plan would be to help the town cover off the cost of that debenture by $50,000 a year. Is that $50,000 doable with your present membership, or would you have to make sure you're increasing your membership to handle that $50,000?
Yeah, so that is predicated on us achieving our growth goals. I think if we recall the charts that were displayed, as Beth had mentioned, our modeling is reasonably conservative today. We're overachieving on the growth side, and if that trend continues, then we think we'll be in really good shape. But if we scale it back a little bit, we have a little bit of a buffer to still stay positive cash flow. So we have a high degree of confidence in the numbers, and we're very happy to sit down, with town staff to look at the detail. Thank you.
Okay, any other questions? Okay, thank you very much for your presentation. And we commit to getting you an answer at the requested time. You're welcome to stay for the duration of the meeting. It should get more and more entertaining as we go. We'll move on then to council minutes. I have a motion moved by Karen Terziano, second by Bob Stone. Be it resolved, the regular council meeting minutes dated October 29th, 2018 be adopted as printed and circulated. Any questions or comments, errors, omissions? All those in favor? That's carried. We have reports from various different meetings. For information only, the Huntsville Public Library Board. Councillor Thompson, anything to highlight for us there?
I actually missed that meeting. As you know, it was October the 9th, so like the rest of us, I was out campaigning quite vigorously, well, other than these acclimated couple here. So I missed that particular meeting, but the minutes are there, of course, in the agenda tonight. But the one thing I did want to mention that we are, as you know, we'll be asking for volunteers for the board coming up soon. But two long-term members, especially Barb Stevens, who's been on the board forever and actually served as chair of the board for many years as well, will not be coming back. She's decided to retire, so we wish her all the best. And then David James, who seems to be volunteering for everything that goes on in town, has said he can't he can't come back either. He's, his involvements and commitments at the hospital have taken up more and more of his time, so he won't be able to be on the board as well. So just wanted to say, to those two, thank you for being such great board members, and I think the vast majority that are there, I think are probably will be putting in their names forward for the next 2018 to 2022 board. Thank you.
Any questions of Councillor Thompson? Okay, moving on. Committee of Adjustment minutes from November 20th, 2018. Councillor Stone, anything particularly exciting to share?
You
from that
keep
meeting?
hoping that there's going to be something
do, I
exciting,
do.
and I'm afraid I have to disappoint you again.
Okay. Any questions of Councillor Stone? Okay. Moving on to BIA Board of Management meeting. Councillor Stone, once again.
A few things. The ice rink that was planned for Rivermill Park will not be happening this year, ironically, because of the early snow. The infrastructure wasn't put in place in time, hopefully next year.
Okay.
The Christmas tree is going up on Town Hall steps on Wednesday, and Santa Claus Parade is this coming Friday, 7 o'clock. And if you're looking for Christmas gifts, don't buy a gift certificate for one store. You can buy downtown dollars, and those gift certificates or downtown dollars are good in 16 restaurants and 30 retail stores. You can get those by calling the BIA office at 789-1400.
Very good.
And that ends the commercial.
Any questions of Councillor Stone and his upbeat report? For those of you who are interested, by the way, members of council, I will be walking in that parade on Friday evening, and you are all welcome to walk with me. It's downhill most of the way, so it won't be too strenuous. Moving on to the Huntsville Lake Bay's Chamber of Commerce update. Councillor Weeb.
Thank you, Mayor Richardson. The meeting got moved to this coming Wednesday, so not much to report, but regrettably the President's Bash was canceled this year, and they're going to look at maybe replacing that event with something a little bit more into the summer months, something like a dinner by the dock or something like that. So they've got some ideas already circulating in how to replace that with something more exciting. So onward.
Okay. Any questions of Councillor Weeb? Okay, seeing none, we'll move on to Planning Committee minutes. Moved by Nancy Alcock, seconded by Dan Eimer. Be it resolved that the Planning Committee meeting minutes dated November 20th, 2018, and the recommendations contained therein be adopted as printed and circulated. Councillor Alcock, anything to highlight from those minutes?
Thank you, Your Worship. I'll be very brief. Actually, the item that I would like to highlight isn't in the minutes, and there's a reason. There's a reason for that. We were supposed to hear the application from the applicant who is proposing to develop Langmaid's Island in Lake of Bays, and the reason why it was before us is there's a proposal to develop 2 parking areas on South Portage Road, which falls in the town of Huntsville. And the reason why we didn't hear the application is the day before our meeting, the applicant decided to pull the application from our committee and appeal it directly to the new LPAT, which is exactly what they did for the proposal in Lake of Bays on the island itself. So that's a requirement. We weren't able to hear it. And I just thought it was important to mention that.
Good update. Any questions of Councillor Alcock? Seeing none, all those in favor? Motion is carried. We have a motion moved by Brian Thompson, seconded by Karen Terziano. Be it resolved the General Committee meeting minutes dated October 31st, 2018, and the recommendations contained therein be adopted as printed and circulated. Any errors or omissions? All those in favor? That's carried. I have a motion moved by Brian Thompson, seconded by Karen Terziano. Be it resolved the General Committee meeting minutes dated November 21st, 2018, and the recommendations contained therein be adopted as printed and circulated. Questions? All those in favor? That's carried. We have reports. Report number CS 2018-47, the Macaulay-Robertson usage update from Carrie Lamb for information. Did you want to highlight anything from that, or you think that it's reasonably self-explanatory? Are there any questions about that report? Okay. Moving on then. So we're gonna talk about the Macaulay Robertson project right now. So I have a motion moved by, what is that? Okay, moved by Councillor Fitzgerald. I think your signature's getting worse. Seconded by Dan Eimer. Be it resolved that council directs staff to finalize the tender documents based on staff's recommendation, option 3, for the redevelopment of the Macaulay Robertson Ball Diamonds in the 2019 season, and for the project cost of $2,195,545 be added to the 2019 capital budget for consideration, and for the staff notify the baseball user groups of a potential shortened 2019 baseball season should the project proceed. And for the council receives the presentation made today by Patrick Reese of WSP regarding the various user groups of Macaulay Robertson Recreation Park. And for the information collected during customer consultations held on November 7th, 2018 be used in the drafting of the Community Services Master Plan. Questions, comments? Councillor Weed.
Thank you, Your Worship. I wanted to, at this time, put forward an amendment to that motion. There's, as you all know, there was some discussion about perhaps looking at a phased approach to this project. And after reviewing some of those documents and some of those options, it became clear to me that one of the options I felt quite favorably for, and therefore I'm putting that forward with a small change to one of the items, and I'll put that forward now if you wanted to read that.
Happy to.
We can discuss further.
I think the amendment's longer than the original. Oh, but you need a seconder, sir.
Oh.
That looks like Councillor Thompson's got a pen and eager.
So this activate the ink. We're good.
Sign that if it comes, if it goes to that.
Okay, I have a motion moved by Councillor Weeb, seconded by Councillor Thompson. Be it resolved that council directs staff to finalize the tender documents based on.
I'm so sorry. He didn't give you the amendment, he gave you the final one as amended. That's the main motion.
It's a good thing the clerk knows what's going on here, because nobody else does. It's usually the way it works. Thank you, Madam Clerk. The amendment reads as follows, moved by Councillor Weeb, seconded by Brian Thompson. Be it resolved, the following be struck out at the end of the first paragraph. Staff's recommendation, option 3, for the redevelopment of the Macaulay Robertson Baseball Diamonds in the 2019 season. And that the following paragraph be struck out, and further that the project cost of $2,195,545 be added to the 2019 capital budget for consideration. And that the following be added at the end of the first paragraph. 2019, redevelop backstops and infields for diamonds A, B, C, and F only with Marco Clay Washington ball mix. In 2022, redevelop lights, outfields, irrigation, home run fences, and warning tracks. And that the following paragraphs be added, and further the 2019 project cost of $712,461 plus $20,000 for infield upgrades be added to the 2019 capital budget for consideration. And further that the 2022 project cost of $1,563,120 be added to the 2022 capital budget for consideration. Okay, Councillor Weeb.
Okay, thank you for that. If you'll go back to the notes sent out today, you'll see that that basically aligns with option T in your package. I felt that it was worth the discussion to, first of all, clarify that the wording for the Marco Clay Washington ball mix applies to Diamond F only. It's not for all A, B, C, and F. It's for F only. I know it kind of reads a little bit,
okay,
maybe ambiguously, but I thought that was an important point to bring forward to discuss amongst council and to perhaps ask our staff. our staff one more time how that would roll out and what the additional maintenance costs, et cetera, would be associated with it. I also felt that given the budget constraints that we're heading for, this perhaps wasn't the best year to go headlong into a project of this magnitude. I want to see that in the end, the users get what they really want for their, like out of their baseball diamonds. And if that means phasing it over several years over this term, I'd love to see the end product be desirable and something that everyone can support, and also be something that doesn't place too onus a burden on the taxpayer at the same time. So that's something to consider, and obviously I think Colleen and Steve would be ready to field questions in the maintenance side of it and the rollout side of it, but I'm putting that forward for consideration, and we can go from there.
Just before I go to questions, if I'm looking for some clarification for everyone, you suggest 2019 to complete about $712,000 worth of work, and then that the balance be completed in 2022. I assume you're suggesting 2022 to save up enough money. Is that the reasoning behind that time frame?
Mm-hmm.
Or are you suggesting that it be done over the course of the next 3 years?
Well, I think it would ultimately come down to between now and then deciding when, financially, when it would make the most sense. But I certainly would say a more accurate reading maybe would be that no later than 2022.
Okay, fair enough. Okay, questions on the amendment? Councillor Thompson.
Well, I did sign it, I did second it. I'm just wondering if it's necessary, as the second paragraph and further that be added to the 2019 capital budget for consideration. So it would be discussed, I think, at that point, and I think the fine points could be ironed out at that point as well. So I'm just wondering if the amendment is even necessary at this point.
You can respond to that if you like to.
Thank you. I guess I wanted to set out some clarity amongst council as to what it is we are considering, because it's two very different asks to consider 2.2 million versus 700,000 for this cycle. So the idea was to break that up and have the first portion of this phase considered in this budget cycle. So,
in fact, the original motion directs staff to finalize tender documents based on spending $2.2 million next year. So, I can, if council does decide to do some sort of variation of phasing, does it make sense to have all those tender documents complete now? I don't know, and maybe somebody can answer that question for us. We'll give them a minute to think about it. I'm going to go to Deputy Mayor Terziano next.
Thank you, Your Worship. I don't disagree with the amendment, and I'm not saying that I think we should do it that way or not do it that way. Two things. I don't think we should be finalizing any tender documents until we've looked at this through budget and decided what we are doing. So that's the first thing. So I think we were dropping that paragraph, so no matter what, we're dropping the tender documents. Is that correct?
The only amendment I have is the one that I just read.
Option 3. Anyways, so I'm trying to remember where the tender document bullet
This
was.
amendment does suggest removing that paragraph,
okay.
yes.
Yeah. So we're going to see our budget for the first time on December 12th as prepared by staff. We're going to see a status quo budget. We're going to see a list of staff-driven new initiatives. We're going to see a list of things that council has talked about in the last number of years, which will be new initiatives. We have a request from the Curling Club. We have another report coming up, the transit study, and some increases there. We have the ball diamonds, and I just think and nothing's happening in November at the ball diamonds. So I really think that we would be better off to defer a decision on this until we've at least seen our first draft of the budget on December 12th, so that we can put into context everything that's going to be on our plate.
Okay? Can I ask, oh, the treasurer is here, Julia. Do you know off the top of your head the balance of the reserve in, for this parks facilities?
Sorry, is that on? There's actually two parks reserve accounts. There's the parks facility, the capital replacement reserve, which has a 700,000 in it, 711,000. And then there's also the Parkland Reserve, which has about 900,000 in it, which is the money that we collect in lieu of Parkland.
Okay. So, you might say that again for Councillor Fitzgerald. His hearing's as bad as his eyesight now, it seems.
So our capital replacement reserve for parks is 711,000. And our reserve for fees in lieu of Parkland is about 913,000.
Okay. Deputy Mayor Terziano.
Thank you, Worship. Julie, can you just clarify our second Parks Reserve, what the limitations are, what that can be used for? The $900,000 one?
It's to be used for the development of new parkland.
It has to be new development, though, not redevelopment, correct?
It can be redevelopment of existing parkland, if you're bettering in, yeah.
So, any improvements, I suppose, could be taken from that fund?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. It's not as desperate a situation as you once thought, is it, Deputy Mayor Terziano? You put a smile on her face. Okay, any other questions about the amendment, I guess, at this point? Or do I hear another, another motion to put this on hold while we discuss it at the budget? Deputy Mayor Terziano.
Can I amend the amendment to defer, or can I? Oh, I don't know what you can do.
Madam Clerk, what's the cleanest way to do this? Okay, so I've been suggested we rule on this one first. So, so I'll call the question on the amendment then, if there are no more questions about it. Councillor Alcock.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just a note of clarification. The amendment is suggesting that we, in fact, just consider, removing the finalization of the tender documents now. That's gone, and we're just referring this to the budget.
I can read it again if you want.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thanks.
So the amendment removes the very first paragraph. So the finalization, no, it doesn't actually. It doesn't remove all of it. This amendment suggests removing a portion of it. This is the part that says staff's recommendation, option 3. So it obviously, what it would suggest is finalizing tender documents for what's been suggested as phase 1, right? So there's still some tender documents to be finalized with this amendment. Deputy Mayor Terziano.
Thank you, Your Worship. Probably through you to the clerk. If we defeat this amendment, is that something that can't be brought back to the table?
The matter itself is still on the table. It's not dealt with. You're just making an amendment to this motion, but then the motion comes back as is, still stands, so it's still live.
So if you defeat this, you could make another amendment to the main motion.
But
slightly different than this one, and you'd be okay.
Okay, but something similar to that could come back.
Yes. Okay, any questions, any more questions on Councillor Weeb's proposed amendment? All those in favor of Councillor Weeb's proposed amendment? All those opposed to Councillor Weeb's proposed amendment? Okay, that is defeated. It was a noble effort, but you may get what you want in the end. I have to write defeated on that?
Yeah, yes, please. I just need when we want this to come back.
Okay, we're back to the main motion. We'll continue the discussion on the main motion. Do you want me to read the main motion again? Councilor, Deputy Mayor Terziano.
I'm going to make a motion to defer the project until our January meeting.
Okay.
To defer the decision until the January meeting, primarily because in light of the fact that we have a large chunk of money in the other parks reserve as well, we may well be able to do a larger piece of this project than we thought we could a few minutes ago. I just think that we need to get it right, and I think that if we do it in January, we still have lots of time.
I think that's a responsible course of action as well. Councillor Thompson.
Thank you, Your Worship. I would agree with that, and I think we, in the whole process going forward, we have the curling club to consider as well. And now that we just found $1.6 million, maybe it puts a different light on things going forward. So I would agree that I think we should be looking at the whole sports requests on sort of a macro level for the next 4 years, as opposed to a one-off situation on each one of these. That would be my thought.
Does that mean you're prepared to second that motion?
You betcha.
Okay. You have your secondary. Councillor Weed.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you, actually, to staff, probably Steve and Colleen, what are your thoughts on that, the timing of waiting for going out to tender to January, possibly February, if you think that would affect pricing?
Mr. Hernan.
We've proven that the earlier we can get the tenders out, the better pricing we get. January or February doesn't scare me. If we get into April, May, June, it just shoves the project back a year.
Okay, thanks for that.
Okay, so you've heard the motion. Any other questions on the motion to defer to the January 2019 regular scheduled council meeting? All those in favor of deferring to January? That is carried. Okay. Thank you. Oh, I have a motion. Moved by Bob Stone, seconded by Karen Terziano. Be it resolved, the council grant a right-of-way over 88 King William Street in the favor of the abutting lands to the south, parts 1 and 2 of Plan 35R 25730. And further, that council grant an easement over parts 1, 2, and 4 of 35R 12304, 88 King William Street, in favor of the abutting lands to the south, parts 1 and 2, 35R 25730, to permit the construction of a median and egress. And further, that an agreement be entered into between the town and the owner of parts 1 and 2, 35R 25730, such that the town shall not be responsible for any maintenance of the features which are subject to the easement. And further, the District of Muskoka be granted an easement for municipal water and sewer services over part 4, 35R 12304, and further, the mayor and clerk be authorized to sign all necessary documentation pertaining to these transfers. I assume that that is clear as mud to everyone around this table. This actually pertains to the entrance and the lights where the, what's it called now? The Journey's End. What is it now? Comfort Inn. So where the Canadian Tire gas bar is going to go there, the town actually owns a sliver, well, 4 parts of land, tiny little pieces of land across there. And there's easements for the motel, there's easements for the little plaza that's there. And this property is going to need some kind of a registered easement as well, because they technically can't get to the property. So this is a kind of a housekeeping kind of thing. Anyway, other questions about it? All those in favor? That is carried. Starbucks is on its way. Is that the name of it? Is that what they call it, Starbucks? It's expensive, it's all I know. Okay, moving on. Moved by Councillor Armour, seconded by Jason Fitzgerald. Councillor Fitzgerald. Be it resolved that council receive the Huntsville Transit Needs Assessment and Ridership Growth Plan, and further that staff be directed to submit phase number 1 of the transit plan for 2019 budget consideration. Questions? All those in favor? That is carried. Oh, into bylaws. Okay, moved by Brian Thompson, seconded by Karen Terziano. Be it resolved that the following bylaws be received, numbered, and read a first time this 26th day of November, 2018. Bylaw 2018-133, that's the fees and charges bylaw. Bylaw 2018-134, that's the disposition of previously declared surplus lands at Concession 2, Lot 16, RP 35R 8495, Part 4, also known as 2626 Ashton Road. Bylaw 2018-135, Fletcher, Lot 8, Concession 10, Brunel, that's 60 Widgetowan Road, That's a Shore Road allowance closure. Bylaw 2018-136, Ripenberg, Part Lot 16, Concession 2, Stisted, also known as 2617 Aspen Road, that's a rezoning. Bylaw 2018-137, Kirkby Real Estate Limited, Part Lot 28, Concession 11, Stevenson Township, that's also known as 931 Old Muskoka Road, that's a rezoning. Bylaw 2018-138, Purnell, Part Lot 24, Concession 3, Brunel, that's also known as 676 White House Road, it's a rezoning. Bylaw 2018-139, Pachinda, Part Lot 30, Concession 9, Stevenson, 52 Ridge Cove Driveway, rezoning. Bylaw 2018-140, Wedgwood, that's Part Lot 24, Concession 1, Brunel, that's at 3958 Portage Road, that's a rezoning. Bylaw 2018-141, Woolings, Part Lot 25, Concession 8, Stevenson, that's 203 Stevenson Road 8 East, it's a rezoning. Bylaw 2018-142, Charles Hudson Aluminum, Part Lot 7, Concession 11, Chafee, that's at 77 Muskoka Glens Road, rezoning. Bylaw 2018-143, Reed, Part Lot 18, Concession 13, Chafee, that's at 132 Stalls Road, a rezoning. Bylaw 2018-144, Northern Shores Association, Part Lot 28, Concession 3, Part Lots 25 to 28, Concession 4, Stisted, that's 897 Etwell Road, a rezoning. And Bylaw 2018-145, Northern Shores Association, Part Lot 28, Concession 3, Part Lots 25 to 28, Concession 4, Stisted, that's 897 Etwell Road still, and the holding provision removal. All those in favor of first reading? Motion is carried. We have a motion moved by Brian Thompson, seconded by Karen Tusiano. Be it resolved that bylaw 2018-133 to bylaw 2018-145 inclusive be reported and read a second and third time to finally pass this 26th day of November 2018. Questions? All those in favor? That motion is carried. Okay. We have council correspondence from October 23rd to November 20th. Anybody interested in any of that? District of Muskoka update. Who would like to go first? I guess we didn't have a lot of committee meetings, did we? We just had council. I guess that falls to me, and I'm not prepared. We did have an orientation session, but you were all there for that. Does anybody remember anything that happened at district council? It was pretty quiet meeting. We handed out service awards to district councilors who aren't returning. Oh, yes, we decided to send the Muskoka and Area Health System Transformation Report to the province again. We had to reconfirm what we've already done. That was odd, but we did it. We borrowed some money for Georgian Bay. Closed some roads for some Santa Claus parades. I don't know. Any questions about any of that? Sorry, don't have much to report. Getting towards the end of things. You also have in your package there the Mock Capital Plan Development Task Force Update number 24. And ROMA, the Rural Ontario Municipal Association Board of Directors, call for nominations. If anyone's interested in serving on ROMA, you are encouraged to put your name forward. Okay. Any questions about any of that? Okay. So the next part of our meeting is the truly bittersweet part of this. I'm excited to share some stuff with council, everyone here. I think it's important to point out that two of our members are not coming back next term. Bob, I found a way to keep him engaged, so he's not going to escape us completely. But I'd like to acknowledge that his lovely wife is here as well, and she's put up with his shenanigans for the last 4 years, and so I have. quite done yet, Dad.
You're gonna expect me to speak after this?
Yeah, I am, actually. So we have a number of things here for you as well, and I want to start,
Could I ask one thing?
Yeah.
Could we defer the photo till after?
Yeah,
I
yeah.
can see why.
Yeah, absolutely.
There's something I want to
Okay.
do.
First thing I want to do, you'll recall at a council meeting, I think our last council meeting, we adopted a new policy where we're going to change the flag on the town hall clock every month to make sure it's never tattered. And as a thoughtful way to give gifts to those people in this community we want to honor as best we can. And so you're going to get the very first flag. So that's the one that came off today. I also, the video started as a book, actually, so you have one already, and this one is just for you. And then the staff have a couple of things for you as well. So if you'd like us to wait for those, I'll let you do your thing. And uh-oh, I think we get your gavel back here as it turns out. So.
Good thing I didn't take my granddaughter to task.
And so before this ends, I'd like Det to come up here. He's going to say a few words, and Det will read the final resolution of this council meeting before we go downstairs to Partners Hall for a brief reception and maybe a drink or two. Chair's yours, sir.
Well, first of all, that was totally blindsided me. That's awesome, whoever put that together. Obviously, my family had a hand in it. Thank you so much. I'm going to go back to the history. Since the picture came up, 1953, 65 years ago, we landed in Canada on November 3rd, and I wound up in Huntsville mid-November. And I was 9 years old, and I recall looking out the window of the train, and it was a November very similar to the one we're having right now. And I'd learned about Siberia at school in France. And I thought, what are my parents doing? They're bringing me to Siberia. Because I lived in south central France with orchards and vineyards. But you know what? Huntsville grew on me. And I'm going to tell you why. My grandmother worked for Sid Avery. Sid Avery was mayor of Huntsville in 1953-54. At one point, I don't know how it happened, he brought my older sister Rosvita and I to the town hall, and I saw that rogue gallery, and he explained to me that those were the men that had looked after Huntsville over the years. That impressed me. Then the next thing, my parents got a job as caretaker and housekeeper for Miss Hart, and I lived in the Hart House, and I found out the history about the Hart House, and that impressed me. I met a man by the name of Wally Jones. He was a scoutmaster, just an awesome mentor. Pittman's Bay, I hung out at Pittman's Bay. I met a man by the name of Laverne Reynolds, lacrosse, scouts, one-handed car driver at 120 clicks, just no problem, well, miles an hour back then. He talked me into buying insurance. Okay, good idea, Laverne. Huntsville grew on me. I was thinking, what do I do to have a career in Huntsville, etc., and go to have a family and live here? I wound up going to university for 1 year and realized I'm not the guy that's going to stick his nose in books for years. I had a part-time job with A&P, and I decided, you know what, for Muskoka, I'm making really good money. I have a job. This is good for me. They transferred me to Windsor in the late 60s, 69. I boarded with some a guy I met at A&P, and it turns out that his wife had a very good friend, and he kept searching around Windsor figuring that he might be able to spot her at a bar somewhere. It never happened. Of course, she'd been hiding her car, so that's why we didn't find. Anyway, we wound up going on a blind date. And you know what? I'm the most fortunate man in the world. I met a woman who is strong, independent, and very intelligent. In fact, she got her BA by correspondence while raising 3 kids and a husband through Laurentian. I'm saying this because I had a full-time job during the day, and as our kids hit school in VK Greer, they started busing my son. He's a kindergarten kid to Huntsville, and I'm thinking, what the heck is going on? So my wife and I went to see the principal to start a parent group. He said, no, I'm not having a parent group. It was an election year. Janet said, you know what, you can talk. Why don't you run for school board trustee? I said, oh, look, it's old gals. It was Mary Aska, Joan Whitcock. She said, Dad, we need somebody at the school on the inside. So I said, okay, and I was successful. I couldn't have juggled a full-time job with AMP and a career in politics without the support that I had at home. So, having said that, going through, you guys know all about chairman and the new school VK. I'm going to go with Terry Clark. That was my first administration that I sat on. Terry was an awesome guy. I'd met him through having to go to parent interviews for my daughter at high school, for crying out loud, but anyway. But I always respected Terry. And you know what? He was a great mayor on behalf of this town. He had a council. We jived and we worked together. And it was his point to include us all in the executive team with the directors and everybody. And the only administration since where I felt that debate was encouraged and indeed welcome, where at the end of the day you didn't go away not talking to somebody else because it had been us and them, is our present Mayor Scott Aitchison. I've totally enjoyed this past for two terms, 8 years. Back to Terry Clark. There was Ted Hares, Katie Gilchrist, Bill McDonald, Larry Cooper, that helped me to become the counselor that I wanted to be. They were all very patient and said, no, Dad, you know what? We don't need 8 people directing staff. We appreciate that you are doing something on behalf of somebody, but there's a process. Are you listening? So I learned that by working with staff, all of a sudden things happened in the direction that you had hoped they would. And then you made the point to thank staff for working with you. You know, it's been an experience that I'm glad that I had that insight into what Huntsville is. And you look around whenever something happens, there's people always volunteering. The things are a success because there's a heart in Huntsville that I felt when I came here. And you know, when I hear now about refugees and they're not being wanted, and geez, you know, I was so grateful to come from where we were to this country and have the opportunities that I've had. Having said all that, I want to thank all you guys, present staff. And this has been just awesome working with all of you. Thank you. This council especially. But my most memorable recent time was I run a little golf tournament for the fire department. Fire department's been, Ross Payne, you know, there was a guy, he used to call me, how you doing, kid? Like I was getting up in years. But he had an attitude. And the fire department has always been close to my heart. And fortunately, I've been able to act on behalf of council as fire coordinator. To get the guys a little socially involved, I got a golf tournament going. I don't know, it's probably in its 15th, 18th year. This year, Chief Hernan and the fire department in Port Sydney blew me away at the end of the festivities. I was all done. I'd given out all the prizes, and I thanked everybody and see you whenever. And Steve came out and said, "We're not done, Dep." There's a bag under there. Could I have that, please? Thanks, Tanya. And he came up with this, and I'm going to model it. I haven't worn it because it wasn't proper to wear it till now. And in each pocket was a generous gift to Cabela's and Sports Town, Golf Town. I'm going to wear this with pride. And thank you, Steve, and thanks to the Fire Association, and thanks to all of you. And you know what? I'm going to be back here and out and see how things are going and make sure that they're done properly and that my neighbors are looked after. Thank you.
Okay. I definitely need a drink now. We do have a couple other items here, and I know that Denise would like to give it one item. I'm going to give her a chance to talk too, so you go ahead.
So Det, on behalf of staff, we can't thank you enough for all your support over the many years. And it's like losing a part of our family because you've been here a very long time. You've been extremely supportive and always there to stand behind us. So we wish you all the best in your retirement. And you may be gone, but you will never be forgotten. And as a favorite saying of mine is how thankful we are to have known someone that it's so hard to say goodbye to. So all the best to you, Dad. Thank you.
If I may, I knew you when you were just a little kid and came on board. You have grown immensely administratively. Thank you on behalf of Huntsville.
There you go. I think that said it best. If you couldn't have done it all without an amazing wife who helped you and supported you and raised 3 amazing kids.
I'd be jealous if there was somebody else.
So, Jan, we wanted to acknowledge your sacrifice as well to make all of this possible. So we have a small token for you as well. Okay. I think that's it. I have a confirmation bylaw to read. It's moved by Bob Stone, seconded by Karen Terziano. Be it resolved that confirmation bylaw 2018-146 be received, numbered, and read a first, second, and third time, and finally passed this 26th day of November 2018. All those in favor? That is carried. And the final resolution will actually be read by Councillor Schumacher.
The mic on. It's moved by Det Schumacher, seconded by Dan Artmer, Councillor Schumacher, seconded by Councillor Armour, be resolved that we do now adjourn at 9:45?
15.
9:15, should have put PM. All those in favor? Thank you, guys. All done.
So there is a reception in Partners Hall. You're all welcome.